Hi, I'm Ben and welcome to Field and Foley episode 30. Today I'm thrilled to have Pauli Ondruska and Henry Scott from Remedy Entertainment joining us. With their extensive expertise in game audio, they've played pivotal roles in crafting the intense soundscape of Alan Wake 2. In this episode, we'll delve into their unique experiences working on such an esteemed franchise, exploring everything from the meticulous recording of Foley to the techniques used to bring the game world to life through sound. So, hello you two, thank you for being on the show.
Hello.
Hello.
Thank you, Ben.
Thank you.
Excited to be here and nervous, but mostly excited.
That's good. I mean, I'm nervous, so we're both nervous then. I already mentioned this briefly before the show, but this is kind of a little birthday present for myself because I'm such a big fan of the Alan Wake games, and I've been looking forward to the release of the game last year, and then I've just been playing it and enjoying it, and especially the soundscape. So this is like a little treat for myself. But I'd like to, in the beginning, go to something maybe more general, because I try to explain more concepts of audio to people that are listening that are not in the audio field. And so for Henry, for you, could you maybe briefly explain what a technical audio designer does?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So the very brief elevator pitch of it would be, I help put the sounds in the game. That's literally the gist of it. That can be anything to do with like working with the middleware we use. So on Alan Wake 2 it was Wise from Audio Kinetic, working with that, designing the sort of signal flow of, you know, where all the sounds and the music is going to go, sticking assets into Wise, and then also hooking it up to our engine. So there's a fair amount of not super heavy programming, but a little bit of programming. We use Lua as our scripting language for attaching and implementing all of our Wise events to the game. The game engine itself that we use, Northlight, which is Remedy's engine, that runs on C++, like a lot of engines. There is a tiny bit of touching of that you have to do as a technical audio designer, but we thankfully do have some really good support from audio programmers who help us with that stuff so that we don't make the game explode when we shouldn't. That's the gist of it. It's mostly working with Wise, which when we do work with Wise, it's not exclusively the technical audio designers using it. The sound designers obviously use that a lot. In fact, there's quite a lot of collaboration on that side. But then beyond that, once we need to go from Wise to the game, that's where we sort of, you know, really get to flex our muscles, have some fun, and build some cool systems that work for the sound designers, and sometimes even tools as well that they can use, so that they can use the editor that we use to actually say, oh, I want this Wise event to play here in this scenario with this sort of, I don't know, volume and pitch and blah, 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 all that. That's the gist of it, I would say.
Very cool, yeah. And maybe, Pauli, to you also, can you talk a bit about your background? What's your role on the project?
Yeah, so for Alan Wake 2, I worked mainly on bringing the characters to life. So when it comes to Foley, clothing materials, kind of like character-based physics, water weighting, for example, weapons, there is basically that is my area where I worked on. So,
Nice.
Yeah, that's,
Very nice work, yeah. And what I also wanted to ask you too, because my friend and audio brother Jay and me, we were just talking I think 2 days ago about that the only two companies we really would like to work at would be Larian Studios and Remedy Entertainment, because I don't know, those are like, for us, like those are the big and friendly, and I don't know, the whole vibe and work ethic is something that we really can appreciate. So I would like to know for you two, like, how did you came to work at Remedy?
do you want to go first?
I'll go first, yeah, sure. So I am... So Remedy's based in Helsinki, Espoo, Finland, sorry. And I'm obviously, as you can tell by my accent, not Finnish. I sort of grew up just outside of southwest London. And yeah, I was doing loads of like technical audio work kind of on the side, not really for any like commercial projects. I did one or two, which I really enjoyed. I mostly did a lot of YouTube tutorials, where I would just tinker around in like Unity using Fmods, and anything I learned, I would share it online. And I'm mostly doing that, but obviously the dream was to get some work in game audio, because it's so much fun. And yeah, I was at this point during COVID where like I was applying for jobs, not getting anywhere. I remember I applied for, I forget the name of the studio. There's one based in Middlesbrough I applied for. There's a big game developer scene in Guildford, which isn't too far from me. I was applying for jobs there, I didn't get anywhere. And I was really getting frustrated, like, oh, this is going nowhere. A friend of mine who I'd met just through like networking in various places in the UK, mostly in London, Thomas, his name is, he said, oh, there's this job opportunity at Remedy, and it sounds like it's right up your alley. Send me the job application. And I always wanted to do two things. Obviously, one was work in games, and the other was to actually move to a different country. And that was part of it. It was like, oh, we need someone to actually move to Finland for this job. And I remember talking to one of the recruiters, and they were like, sort of saying, yeah, we understand the moving part's a bit difficult for people. Would you consider moving to Finland? And I was like, yeah, that's a no-brainer. I'm definitely up for that. And I don't think she was expecting that. So yeah, I applied for it. It was a long process, obviously, as you can imagine. But yeah, here I am, and absolutely loving it. Like, I can't fault anyone I've worked with. All the team's been fantastic, both in and out of audio. And it's been a real pleasure and honor to work on Alan Wake 2.
Awesome.
Yeah, then for me, it's like a bit of different kind of route. So I started early doing like video games, but I was mainly focusing on mobile games before I joined Remedy. And when I went to university to study more sound design, I met my current coworker, Ville Sorsa, who was teaching us sound design back in the day. So Ville is currently principal audio designer at Remedy. And he was teaching us and telling us what it means to be in, working in AAA field. And he shared really kind of like these essential things that you need to know about audio stuff. He had this kind of like mindset, like really good mindset that he was able to share us. And then alongside university studies, I did continue on mobile games, but then I think it was like almost 3 years ago now, I suddenly got a call from Jeremy Corbett, who had heard good word like from me from Ville. So Ville has been saying that there might be a chance for you to get a good coworker alongside with Alan Wake. Jeremy was working for Alan Wake as an outsourcer, so he hired me to work on his company, and then I joined into kind of like I joined on Alan Wake 2 through his company. Then I believe it was like 1 year. After 1 year, I got hired by Remedy as a full-time employee. So
nice. I hope you bought your friend a beer or something, because that's
yes.
Well done.
Yes, I still work with him. So
nice. Yeah, and going right into the topic of Alan Wake 2, because as I said, it's an amazing game. It has been critically acclaimed and won a lot of prizes, of course, and especially the sound design. And of course, for us with Field and Foley podcast, the thing that I want to know most about, and first and foremost, is about the Foley work, because as they were saying in the behind the scenes, that you were aiming for like an intense, loud Foley sound, like an over-exaggerated sound. So while nothing, in air quotes, is happening, everything is very loud, and that subconsciously gives you the feeling that something is about to happen, and everything is feeling like eerie and creepy, and it works amazingly well. So I would like to know from you, like, how did you approach recording the Foley and like you were talking about like outsourcing, of course, to other recorders as well, but like planning this whole thing, what kind of like guidelines did you give to Foley's people? What kind of sounds did you need? Did you record everything yourself? Whatever you can tell me about that.
Yeah, I can start on that. So for starters, we wanted to go for this kind of like more immersive way on presenting the player characters to players. So, for example, the footstep system that we currently have in Alan Wake 2 is based on heel and toe kind of like assets. Mm-hmm. So what we ended up doing, this was also kind of like really hard thing to nail down because we did so many testing variations with our external partner Tapio, and who's working in Kaamos Media. So he was really nice guy to work with because our demands were like really high on Foley perspective. So we did a lot of iterations. We like in early development, we tested what kind of like heel sound works along with toe sounds. So it was kind of like trial of error. And
I remember there was so much focus on the footsteps in particular.
Yes, it was really hard to nail down, but eventually we found like a really good spot for those. Then we moved to different set of materials, and after a while we started to add these like little branches breaking and extra materials beside heel and toe. So that was kind of like our initial goal.
Yeah, nice. So you really focused and came from the footsteps first. That is interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I mean it's always interesting when I talk to people that are not in game audio or general in audio about how like very important footsteps are, because nobody really, except for us audio people, nobody really cares about footsteps. But if they're missing, I mean, that's the thing that grounds you as a player in the world. And if that doesn't sound right, or if doesn't work, then like the whole immersion is killed from the get-go. So very, very good on focusing on that first. And maybe you can talk a bit more about like the systems you set up, because we have the technical audio designer here. So
yeah, thankfully the footsteps was handled by a few others in terms of the technical side of things. So whenever they broke, I didn't have to tear my hair out on them, which is nice. I remember one thing we struggled with, I don't know where this came from, in fact you probably remember this, Pauli, is there was at one point a problem with the rhythm of the footsteps. They would get really kind of out of sync, and almost occasionally sound like the player character would occasionally do a little skip, if that makes sense. So like sometimes instead of it sort of being on a 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 beat or something close enough to that, you'd occasionally get a 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3, and that was like you say, it's, you know, if it's working, you don't really notice the footsteps. In fact, like you could say that about most sound design. If it's working, you don't really notice it as a player. But then when this cropped up, it really sort of distracted you from the atmosphere and the creepiness that obviously was the focus with everything sound related. So that was a hurdle.
Because I can actually add on that, but because the footstep system was so precise that it even detected animation errors. So if the animation wasn't in sync,
is that where it came from?
Yeah, so that actually caused it. So that was like, it's nice to say that we have good enough system to actually point errors on some of other departments, but we got it solved out. So
nice.
I remember doing we would do occasionally weekly or bi-weekly playthroughs of a various level that the team had been working on, and Richard, the lead audio on Alan Wake 2, I remember him always talking about the footsteps and how they sounded in the environment that we were in. He was always he had such a good ear for it that, you know, he would notice, we've just walked through a puddle but I didn't hear any splashing, for example. Which is quite common in the Dark Place. It's a very murky. Well, I was about to say murky and muddy. There's plenty of murky and muddy places in Saga's levels as well. But I remember this one time we were just sort of walking around New York, the dark place, and yeah, it's raining a lot, and that's until he sort of noticed it. I didn't even notice it myself, like, you know, how important little things like that. They don't necessarily need to be really squelchy and sound like they're waterlogged, but just you just need little splashes and just these little details that otherwise didn't match what we were seeing visually on screen with what we were hearing. That was, you know, generally just really valuable for me, and a real pleasure to like hear him sort of focusing on these details that before I wasn't really picking up on. I really enjoyed that. And like I say, a lot of it was focused on footsteps.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned it, because the first time I had this experience as well in the dark place in New York, where I was hearing a puddle and then like looking down with the camera, actually like, oh shit, here's actually a puddle. Like I really enjoyed like the fine details in all the Foley sounds. So yeah, kudos on you. So at least for me, it was worth the effort. So I noticed it.
Yeah, and I remember one little struggle we had from a technical point of view is that, so in order to get that work, obviously we needed some support from, was it I think it was VFX were doing the puddles. And obviously all the teams are sort of working to meet their own deadlines. They've got their own priorities. Obviously, in order to get that to work, we need a certain amount of support from them. We need to we need the game to sort of detect those puddles and tell us, hey, you've just stepped in a puddle, so that we could then tell Wise to, you know, alter the footsteps in some way. And yeah, one thing I sort of learnt doing this project was the importance of keeping communication pipelines flowing regularly, not being afraid to ask for help. Actually, that was a big one. When I first joined, I would stick to my own little bubble. And I've sort of learnt now to not be afraid to talk to people who I don't necessarily know in other teams to get their help. Because otherwise, you know, if we didn't have that collaboration, little things like that wouldn't work. So yeah, part of the credit also goes to the other teams for helping us
definitely
get the tools in place to actually make things like that work.
Yeah, that's very interesting. That's something that I also wanted to ask, but you already answered it. It's like the collaboration between the audio team and other departments. Because I also think, and we've had this on the show before, that you can really just make a great product if you're all working together on a common goal, and a lot of things inform each other. Do you maybe have other examples where audio did something and other teams were like had like a boon of it, or like did something with it that came from audio? Because sometimes even you do audio, for example, for a creature, and then the animation comes afterwards, and you have like audio leading like kind of the style.
Well, one thing that we do have is audio-driven visuals.
We do.
So do you want to...
Yeah, it's a shame we don't have Josh Bell with us today, another technical audio designer who really sort of took responsibility for all the audio-driven visuals we had in the game. In fact, he did a GDC talk on it, so if anyone listening to this has access to the GDC Vault, you can probably find that. What did he call it again? I forget the name of his talk.
Yeah, I can't recall.
Driving visuals with audio or something like that for Alan Wake 2. No, very good. He showed it to us before he went to San Francisco to do it. So he would be the best person to talk about for most of it, but I can say, yeah, using what he sort of created, I used his system a little bit. One thing we did in the Dark Place, this actually relates kind of to player guidance, actually, is we worked with the lighting team using audio-driven lighting. One thing we were learning, one problem the game was struggling with, in the Dark Place especially, because it's kind of based around this hub with these branching areas that focus on different levels. One problem we were having is directing the player to the correct places to get them to start the level. And one way we sort of helped to fix that was with the audio-driven lighting. So there's all these neon signs in the Dark Place. I remember one of our sound designers, Tazio, he really pushed to get that audio-driven. He was like, I will know if I was to look at one of those signs, let's say we didn't use the audio-driven system, if we just played a sound on top of just the lighting flickering at its own pace, I as a player would really notice that. I really want to get this in and working correctly. And thankfully we were able to. So yeah, there's these signs that guide you into some of the alleyways. They flicker on, and yeah, the lighting intensity is driven by a plugin that was built back in the Quantum Break days when Remedy was working on that back in 2014, 15, 16. And we kind of brought it back to life a bit, repurposed it for this. So again, listen to Josh's talk because he will explain it better than I can. But the gist of it is it just listens for it could do more than this, but it listened in this scenario for the amplitude of sound, really basic, using the amplitude on just a basic number scale. We were able to pass it into the lighting team, give them the parameter, and then they could drive the intensity of the lighting and get a flickering effect. And that was really fun to do. If I haven't said it enough, go listen to Josh's talk. It's really good.
Yeah, no, that's really awesome. Yeah, I also noticed that in the Dark Place. Like, I mean, it's a common trope, I would say, in video games to lead with the lights, but leading with sound is something that is hopefully coming more and more, because it's like, yeah, it's getting you in a subconscious kind of level, and you can also, especially today with like 3D sound or good stereo sound, you can like guide players look somewhere they didn't look before, just with like a sound cue, and then if it fits the visuals.
Yes, an example of that actually, without just purely sound, that we used in the Dark Place was in one of the early missions when you're playing as Alan. You encounter a taxi in the middle of an alley, and from the get-go, the plan was, in order to draw your attention to this taxi, which you have to then interact to progress, is with the wiper blades. So the wiper blades make this, and the idea was to draw you in with the sound. That came first, and then later on we talked with animation and actually got some wiper blades to move, because it would be weird if you actually paid attention to the car and the wiper blades weren't moving but you could hear them. But obviously at a distance you won't be able to see the wiper blades. The whole reason for that was to make sure that we communicated to the player, this isn't just an ordinary car, even on just a subtle level.
Yeah.
This is an ordinary car, you kind of need to pay attention to it and interact with it. So that worked quite well, I think, as well. We didn't want to be too obvious with, hey, go over here. We tried to use like lots of subtle ways to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm guessing like this kind of balance is probably hard to achieve, right? Because you don't, as you said, you don't want it to be like very in your face, like a honking horn guiding you somewhere. So, was it a lot of fine tuning with the sounds, like with the intensity or with the kind of sounds you used, or was it like rather easy to get those kinds of effects in?
Probably have to speak to some of the people who did a lot of that. Yeah. It depends a lot on the sound, I would say. Sometimes it's quite easy, sometimes it's quite hard to perhaps get the feel for it, to match the scene, or on a technical level, get it to behave itself and play when you need it to play. Yeah, it very much depends on what sound in particular we're talking about. The wiper blade one, who did the wiper blades? I can't remember.
Can't remember, but there was one really fun thing that actually players notice quite often is the the water thing that you drink water.
The water cooler.
Yeah, water cooler.
Oh yeah.
So that has become players' favorite one, because it's so kind of like attention grabbing. So if you have been playing Alan Wake 2, there's this one scene in a nursing home where you first time arrive to it. It's the whole place feels like old. There's like this kind of like old father clock that ticks, and suddenly this really loud water cooler has this kind of like bubbles inside of it. So that grabs every time players' attention. So I feel like these kind of like loud, although normal sounds, are the ones that create this atmosphere and creepiness in our games as well.
Yeah, and speaking again about those sounds, because I've noticed a lot of recording work was probably done, and I've seen in the behind the scenes this one scene, which I was really fond of someone, I don't know who it was, like crossing his arms and letting himself fall into a lake.
Oh, that was me. So
that was you? Awesome.
Yes.
So yeah, maybe can you tell me a bit about why did you go out and let yourself fall into a lake to record like a body falling into water?
So, although the video footage in that particular video seems to be quite warm and summery, I can say that we filmed it during September. So the water was really like freezing cold.
Finnish September as well.
Yeah.
So
for
colder than most Septembers.
Yes, for Finnish standards as well. So it was really cold, but because our game is based on kind of like this autumn time of year, especially in Washington State, we wanted to have that cold kind of like water sound. So we always aim for realistic approach, and then later on, of course, highlight it whenever we need to. But yeah, we went to this kind of like Finnish lake called Bottom Lake, which is famous for a really unfortunate murder case. So it fits.
Quite appropriate.
So
yeah,
it
just wanted to say it
fits.
fits.
It fits.
There's even hauntings in the sound design.
Yes. So we went to this lake. First, we went to the other side of it, but wind ruined it. So it was so windy that we just weren't able to record on that side of the lake. So we drove all the way to the other side of the lake, and it was perfect. There was trees which covered the whole area, and they didn't, like the trees themselves didn't do that much of noise. But of course, we thought that September, no one is going to be at the beach during that time of year. But of course, there was this young group of people who came there, and of course, when they see an adult man just jumping in a lake, like up and down, just throwing himself to the water, of course, it's going to drag some kind of attention. So they came. To quite close to just talk and chat. So we needed to ask them to leave us alone so that we can actually have a good set of recording. But to answer your question, we wanted to have a whole immersive water wading system in our game. So we needed a lot of water material and realistic material.
Nice. Yeah, and you needed it all to be like sounding the same and be the same recording, right? Because
Exactly.
if you just pick and choose from different libraries, then it's all different recordings, different microphones, different styles, so it doesn't fit together. Yeah, that's amazing. And maybe talking a bit more about like the recording side of things. How much material do you maybe know how much material you recorded for the whole game? Like not just you, but like the whole of the team.
That's going to be hard.
That's going to be hard to actually define, but we had a lot of like Remedy recorded libraries, but also we used a lot of libraries, but we then of course layered a lot of things together just to, make it sound natural and appropriate for our game.
Yeah, I will say, I remember one day we all sat down as a team. Again, Richard, head of audio here, he said, right, we need, if you can, over the weekend or the week, I think maybe a holiday was coming up, if you get a chance to, please can you record rain, just anyone and everyone, just get as much rain content as you can, because there's so many scenes in this game where it rains in such varied locations and stuff that we just needed, I don't have an exact number for you, sadly, but just so much variation in terms of water and rain. Just looping just the rain bed wasn't good enough. We needed like lots of 3D specific spot sounds for different materials. Like there's, for example, there's shelters in Cauldron Lake where there's tarp, so a particular fabric you need it on. Obviously, Dark Place in New York, you've got it on the concrete and stuff. And we were actually, before we did this podcast, we were talking to one of our sound designers, Thomas, who said how, he remembers this, and when he went to record some rain once, it was raining and he did it in his back garden, and he just remembers it just not really being viable to use because there was just a lot of noise, and what we really needed is the kind of fine details of the rain, again, on these spot sounds in these specific locations. So a lot of the rain was done like it was very manufactured in the sense that, he would use like watering cans on different materials and kind of manufacture it himself. And then we placed it very manually in specific spots of the game. Or again, go back to collaboration, we would work with the VFX team. So they've placed in the Dark Place again, actually in some places in Washington State as well, they've placed very specific, like, I don't know how to describe it, it was just water coming off of, say, a gutter or a drain. And you can visually see a large quantity of water in front of you. So we would hook up sounds to those, and depending on the size of it, we would use switches and wires to sort of say, right, we need light patter on concrete, we need medium patter on grass, and so on. So, again, no exact number, but rain was the big one, definitely, for sure.
It was.
Okay, rain was the big one. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, just like you said, like all those different materials, when you start to get into like water sounds on different materials, it's a rabbit hole. I can absolutely do that, yeah.
And I can also add to that we did have a player-related rain. So the players are able to actually hear different kind of fabrics that react to rain as well in our game.
Oh, that's nice. So like the clothing of the characters.
Yes, so you can hear the difference if it's raining on Saga or if it's raining on Alan. So.
Oh right, that's interesting. Even with like the changing of clothes, because I'm guessing she has different clothes. She has the windbreaker on, and she has like, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah, and maybe also on recording. I don't know how much recording you did, but what's always interesting to me, did you use maybe any interesting techniques or any special microphones for any recordings?
I can say that at least when Tatsuya was recording those materials for darkness, kind of like darkness itself.
Another sound designer.
Yes.
Legend, shout out to Tassia.
He and Ville took this one session where they went to inside pool to actually record different kind of like underwater sounds.
Oh.
So they used kind of like your typical hydrophone to actually get these gurgles and all kinds of like bubbly noises that they were then doing. They have I think they have like an example or at least a brief video in that, like behind the scenes, where these two guys are recording stuff in inside pool. So.
Oh yeah, that's interesting. I really like hydrophones and contact microphones because you can do so much interesting things with it. But that's interesting. I didn't expect the darkness to come from underground pool. That's cool.
Yeah, so we have actually one boss in our game, Cynthia, which uses like what you would call it, like a darkness water or kind of like a dark water.
She like has these darkness shockwaves and projectiles, but the boss fight is set in a flooded bunker.
Yes.
And so combining these shockwaves that hit the ground and thus the water, you get this mixture of the darkness elements that they created combined with all these big bombastic splashes.
Yes.
That was good fun.
Yeah.
Another thing that Tazio did recording is for the sound of, occasionally you get grappled by an enemy, right? And you have to blast them with your torch to get them away, and they burn from it because they don't like the darkness. Now, I've never seen these things before in my life. I don't know what they are. He got these like what he calls water beads. They're just like plastic little, very thin plastic balls of water, about like an inch big at max.
Oh, yeah.
And he fried them. He got a frying pan and put them over heat. And I guess the air released out of these beads, it gave this really high-pitched sizzling. And you do a few of them and you get different pitches and you get different textures and stuff. I don't know if it was solely that, but at the very least he's layered that with some other stuff for the burning. Particularly, again, it's on the grapples. Yeah. So if you're playing a Saga and you button mash to get a taken off of you and you don't have a flare, she'll shine the flashlight on them and the noise as the slasher or whatever they're called, the taken, as their like face is getting pushed back by the light. That's what that is.
That's interesting.
Again, I don't know what I've never seen them before, but they've worked so well. Yeah, it's actually done really well with that.
Yeah, I've seen those before. That's a really cool idea. I'm gonna have to get some of those and experiment with those.
Them. Yeah, probably on Amazon somewhere. Yeah,
probably you can get them somewhere. Yeah. Now I'm having like many different thoughts about what to record next. Maybe freezing them, and because I once froze like a hydrophone in ice and let it like thaw at room temperature, and when the ice starts to crack, it also gives some kind of like shrieking noise sometimes, which is very interesting. And like freezing things and frying things, of course, is always fun for sound design.
Speaking of freezing things, and this is a perk of being here in Finland. So a friend of mine who isn't even in audio was just having a walk. Oh no, well technically this happened in Sweden, not Finland. She was walking by a lake or a beach, and that had obviously been previously frozen over, but had started to thaw and melt. All the ice had broken up, and so as the waves were lapping against the shore, all of these little particles of ice gave this really beautiful, it almost sounded like musical glass. I can't describe it. It was
kind of like harmony.
Yeah, she just recorded it on her phone and just said, I just thought you'd be interested in this. And it was just this, it almost sounded like, I don't know, a wind chime or some really It's like a metal instrument with high notes of just ding, 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 on the shores of the waves. That was gorgeous. That sadly did not go in the game. She only did this a week ago. I kind of wish it had, though. We could have used that. In general, water, ice, you can get some really cool material out of that if you get creative with it.
Yeah, absolutely. I've just recently talked to Thomas Rex Beverly. I don't know if you know him. It's like a field recordist, and he did a whole, like, I think almost a year of just glacier recordings, and went to Iceland and other places.
Wow.
And like submerged hydrophones in this big glaciers and got those lasery sounds when they thawed. And the amount of sounds he got out of like ice in general, or the icy landscape, is amazing. There are so many sounds there that I've never heard before, like very genuinely like things that my eyes popped open and was like, what the fuck is this? And it's just, I had no idea. It's he had some place where like there was an underwater waterfall on the ice, and it pushed air bubbles out, so it gave this like almost monster-like creature sounds just out of ice holes. And yeah, it's amazing. So whenever you have something coming up with ice, go to glaciers. That's always fun.
Yeah, because I can only imagine what he's recorded there. Like sounds you wouldn't expect to hear from the natural world. But
yeah, absolutely. I can really recommend his libraries.
What was his name, sorry?
Thomas Rex Beverly.
Thomas Rex Beverly, okay.
Yeah. I'm happy to send you a link.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah, and yeah, speaking a bit about like then going into from recording into stuff that's going into the game. You already talked about it with the footsteps, but do you have anything else that maybe didn't work and took many tries to get right? What was the hardest part, except for the footsteps?
Well, for
There
example,
definitely are examples. Yeah,
yes,
go on, Pauli.
yes. So the clothes were the kind of like really difficult thing to nail down. So we have this thing called bone velocity system. The bone velocity system is actually based on character movements, and we wanted to have this approach that we don't need to hook everything in manually. So because the bone velocity system is driven by the character's bones, the faster the bones move, the louder the clothing material sounds. So we needed to have these kind of like really subtle, subtle clothing sounds. And once the characters, let's say, fight in close combat or run, we have more friction in our kind of clothing. So to build this really huge system, that actually required many multiple tries and many material changes. So, and because the clothing needed to match for each characters. So if, let's say, we have NPC who has a leather jacket, the system needs to work on that. And if we have mascots, for example, in not watery, but in, is it Cauldron Lake? Brightfalls, yes.
Yes.
Yeah,
so we have, so
the mascots. Yeah.
yes. So mascots, what kind of clothing sound they have. And they are also using this like bone velocity system. So we needed to match the material also to those and make the system work on those as well.
Oh, that's awesome. So you made the systems more or less like first, and then when new characters came in, it should have like worked from the get-go. But yeah, of course, you probably a lot of adjusting, adding new materials, adding new styles, and
yes,
yeah, I can really relate to the Foley stuff. As we like briefly talked about before, I just was recording some woolen hat for like fortunately like linear medium, so like a cartoon, but like all those like movements and Foley movements is something that's always at least for me, that's something that I like to record myself, because trying to find something in a library that fits the intensity and the friction and the movements, it's just, it's almost impossible.
It's really hard.
Yeah.
But also we use this bone velocity system for water weighting as well.
Oh,
so,
nice. Okay.
So even if the player is turning just slightly whilst being in the water, you can hear how the water is like swirling, or how would you put it, Henry?
Yeah, like lapping
beneath like players' feet.
And you almost froze in the lake for that kind of sound.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, is that you?
Yes,
that's you, isn't
yes,
it?
When
the
it is
characters
me.
walk
Yes,
through the water, that's all you.
Yes.
Awesome. Yeah, I applaud your commitment.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe another question I have is like, how do you approach, like in general, when you have a task like this, for example, how do you approach it? Are you like going straight into recording stuff, or do you like make a plan first how to set this all up technically, or is it like always like a team effort and you try to plan up then your tasks?
I would say it's definitely a team effort.
Definitely.
More ideas, more kind of like planning we will have in the early development. It's way better. Like the end result is way better if we have more people participating on it. But obviously, like each of these areas will have some kind of like owner who knows it throughout. But obviously, more people throwing in ideas, it's always the better.
Yeah, you sort of have someone who's not. They're not like. They own it. They don't have like the sole say on that system.
No.
Sure. Yeah.
They have most of the knowledge, let's say,
exactly.
how it works in technical perspective or sound design perspective.
Yeah.
Of course, and someone has to take on the hat and say like, I'm responsible for making this good. Yeah.
I think that's what it is. It's responsibility, to get it done. It's not like, oh, you can't touch this part of the game.
Yeah,
it's not that at all.
No.
It's more like, I need to just make sure this gets done. Whether that's, I need to get some help from someone else or do it myself or whatever. It's more that, like you say, responsibility.
Yeah. And you spoke before about like external recorders, and of course that's interesting to me because I am a recordist. So how's that like planned? Do you have like you make this like big plan and you know like, okay, we need this amount of Foley sounds for clothing, we need like water sounds, this we can do ourselves, this we can't. Like, how do you set this all up? Is it something that you do as you go, or is it like very well planned out and then it's just execution?
Richard could probably say
this. I think Richard would have more to say to this, but at least what I can say from collaboration that I did with Tapio Liukkonen, who is the Foley artist that we had on Alan Wake 2. So he's working from Kaamos Media, and we, as I said before, he was like helping us on the footsteps things, but he helped us on the clothing, kind of like setting up the clothing system as well, like the bone velocity system. When Tapio was helping us, we basically requested, let's say, 20 different upper body clothing materials that we need to have fast, slow, and medium kind of like frictions. Then it became this kind of like sheet of different clothings that we sent to him, and then once he had done those, he sent the kind of like the raw iterations first to us, and then we moved into this kind of like back and forth things when we defined what works in our game, and then once we qualified that, okay, now we found the perfect friction, let's say, for the fast moving clothing, then we did the rest of the clothing materials as well. Obviously nothing works like straight out of the box, but
of course, yeah, so a lot of experimentation there and nailing down, just like I said, like trying to find the nailing down the style and the sound of it. Yeah, but it's interesting. So then going a bit more into like more the technical and integration side, maybe you can answer how technology has impacted the way you work as audio designers. Anything interesting new that you've really come to like love, or is it like, has it been the same for a while now? I mean, Wise has been around for a while. So
we used Wise, didn't we? And like Pauli said earlier, the Bone Foley system, which is obviously that's not Wise, that's something that comes from the game engine we used. And then, as I said earlier, we used the Quantum Break plugin for a lot of the audio-driven stuff. In terms of the technology, thankfully it was very... if we needed something like exposed from the game engine, maybe like a parameter or a field or something that we needed to listen to in order to shape the sounds in a certain way. Thankfully, that was, whilst, bless them, they were really like struggling for hands at one point, but the audio programmers we had were really, really helpful. They had a lot of work on their plates, and we only had max 2 dedicated audio programmers at a time, and we had 4 technical audio designers. How many sound designers? Like 5, 6 in-house?
Yeah, in-house it's like 7. Is it already 7? I guess, but like total. But
yeah. So we had all those people, and who would go to these programs and say, "Oh, can we get this? Can we get that?" Just asking them for requests. Can you expose this parameter? Can we do this cool thing? And bless them, they've done really well at getting all the important things that we needed. I'm trying to remember one thing I was asking them for when I was doing. That was right. Yeah. So we were doing. So in the Dark Place. This isn't Foley, but in the Dark Place, there's all these corridors and staircases that you go into in a seemingly familiar environment. You'll go through, but then you'll end up in somewhere completely different. And the idea is to make the game feel like a dream. It's like, oh, how did I get up here? There's not really meant to be any cuts. It's all meant to be very seamless.
Yeah.
You're supposed to ask your question, wait, hold on, how did I get to this part of this world after it's happened? So, kind of like in a dream, you kind of just, nothing makes sense, but you kind of accept it, or at the very least question it until it's too late. There's a lot of those going on, and the way they work is we teleport the player manually. So we'll have these dedicated staircases. There's lots of these in the Dark Place.
Yeah.
Dedicated staircases. I'm kind of ruining I'm kind of pulling back the curtain of it here. I'm ruining the illusion.
It's fine.
Of it.
It's great.
But you go up these staircases, yeah, and the player would manually get teleported to an identical staircase in another part of the environment. Now, that's great visually. Sound design-wise, little bit of a struggle, because if you put like some 3D specific spot sound somewhere, and then suddenly the player gets teleported somewhere else, they're just going to cut out.
Yeah.
Which happened all the time. So technology-wise, that was a tricky one. We tried to mitigate this as much as possible by just saying, okay, what can we cut? Some of these areas we're just going to have to accept that we can't have as many 3D specific spot sounds as we want, or maybe some 3D drones that sort of circle around the player and add to the ambience. But we tried to keep some in. We didn't want to just make it really obvious that we didn't want to switch the entire game to 2D stereo sounds just to make this work. Mm-hmm. So again, big shout out to the programmers we had, Iro and Samuel. They helped expose some tools that Wise has. They have this multi-position tool where you can play an instance of a sound identically in more than one position. So it's not a new instance of the sound. It's the same thing. It's just playing somewhere else. So let's say you're in the hotel in the Dark Place, you've got these wall sconces, like lights on the walls that have been positioned super close to these teleporters. We would use that to play the exact same instance of the sound. Obviously, each wall sconce had its own sound, but then the duplicated versions in the identical teleporty area, that would share an instance. And so you'd go through, and so long as the positions of the teleporter, the wall sconces themselves, and our sound entities in the game, as long as they were all positioned correctly, you shouldn't hear a cut. It should just flow normally.
Yeah.
So that was real tricky. And yeah, again, big shout out to the programmers for helping us expose those tools that we used, because they wouldn't have worked otherwise. It was really satisfying to get working. Yeah.
That's wonderful. Yeah, I remember I remember that sequence in the game, but I didn't think about the sound. Yeah, I was just thinking, oh yeah, you must have probably like moved the 3D sounds with the player, teleported it with them. But yeah, the copying or like the duplicating, that's interesting.
That's how I was trying to do it originally. Yeah. I was trying to just manually brute force it, caveman style. Or if we just move the sound of the player, but it just
became a mess. Probably
you hear it. Yeah, exactly.
You can hear it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it gets other reflections while movement probably also, and that sounds like a real hard problem. Yeah, thank you for that. Thank you for that insight. And then I have a question that I always ask my guests, so it's for both of you separately. What is the first sound you ever recorded, and why did you record it?
That's a really good question. I want to. Can I sit on this for a second, early? Unless you've. Do you know an answer?
Yeah, I don't know yet, but I'm trying to recall.
Yeah, same. I know. I can give you a few. This might not be the exact first sound I recorded, but first thing I did is I remember seeing, when I was first introducing myself to sound design, there's a TEDx talk, I think it is, or a TED talk called "The Lies of Sound Design" or something along those lines. It's really cool, especially if you're new to the world of sound design. the guy presenting it, he plays you 3 or 4 recordings of rain with some visuals. They're different sounding, and then he tells you to guess. He tells you one of them is fake, that he actually recorded the sound of bacon frying to get the rain, but the rest are real, and you have to guess which one is correct. Turns out they're all fake, and that's the trick. He just used bacon for all of them, just in different ways. And I remember going, wait, you could use bacon frying to get rain? And then I remember running downstairs and trying it myself and just hooking up like a Zoom. I just grabbed a Zoom H5N I had, put it way too close to the bacon, so a lot of fat just spewed into the microphone. And I was like, oh wow, it does kind of work. And I just stuck it on like a video of some rain. I don't know if that was definitely the first thing I recorded, but until I remember anything else, I'm going to go with that. The sound of bacon frying.
That's a good one, yeah. I remember the talk as well. I was thinking, like, the good thing is I saw that when I was in the sound business for a while, so I was thinking, like, it's probably all fake. It's like, but it was a good one, and it's really interesting to get people to see that a lot of sounds, especially in movies, are very, very fake, but you're used to those fake sounds. So if you, for example, if you use, like, real gunshots, it's gonna sound so boring in action movies. And so never will you want to use like realistic gun sounds. It's always some kind of design. And of course for other things as well, for like biting into a burger or whatever you have. So yeah, that is always fun.
Yeah, I actually now remember what was my first sound that I recorded, and it's a real bonfire actually. And the thing is that when I recorded it with my new kind of like outdoor mic that I had, like a really fancy windshield and everything, I went too close to it because I wanted to to have the most efficient, most precise bonfire sound that I can have. The recording is awesome, but I still have the original windshield from that recording, and the other side is just simply bird. It's just like ash.
How have we both made the same mistake there? We both went way too close to the video recording.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
That
I still
oftentimes happens, yeah. Oh man, yeah. Especially windshield is like very, very flammable. So yeah.
Yes, exactly.
For new recorders out there, keep your distance from fire. All your gear is very flammable. But that's a good answer. That's a very good answer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I don't have any other questions, so the only thing really left is, do you have like any shout-outs to anyone, any upcoming projects you can talk about? Of course, probably not, but whatever you want to say.
Upcoming projects, we can't say a word, I'm afraid.
Of course.
Which is really sad, because I'd love to tell you about what's going on here. Shout-outs, I could probably go for days, couldn't we, if people we want to shout out.
Yeah, but for sure, I could say that shout-out for Red Pipe.
Yep.
Dynamedian, Tonally. What else is there? Kaamos Sound for Tapio. All of those people who supported the audio side of the things of Alan Wake.
And then just generally to the team who aren't here recording this podcast. Josh, Kit, Tazio, Gurley, Thomas, a lot of them, Ville, Arthur, Tanner Lee doing dialogue, bless them.
Yes.
Both of them. And this game's got so much dialogue. 2 dialogue designers we had.
Exactly.
Unreal.
Yeah. It's unbelievable. And of course Richard.
Richard's
oversee all of us. So
no, yeah, he's been really like welcoming, really supportive. No, he's a really good lead. Fantastic.
Yeah. And Annika, our
yes,
producer.
Big shout out to Annika, production.
Yes.
All right, I just wanted to say as well, obviously the state of the video game industry is struggling at the moment. A lot of people, bless them, have lost their work and are struggling to find new work because of all sorts of various economic reasons. Yeah, anyone who's gone through that, I just wanted to say best of luck to you finding a new job and getting back on your feet. Hopefully it hasn't turned your life upside down too much. And, you know, we're all here wishing you the best of luck, and we can only imagine how hard that's been. So, yeah, keep working hard, keep making wicked games. We want to play them, that's for sure. And, yeah, our thoughts are with you. Best of luck.
That's very nice. Yeah, thank you for those closing words. And, thank you again for being in the show. It was my absolute pleasure. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Yeah, you too, Ben. Thanks very much for having us.
tommonen samanlainen, mutta oota hetki ja sit semmonen, että ilman noita askelia alussa.
Looking for more audio-related podcasts to listen to? We're part of the Audio Podcast Alliance, featuring a hand-picked selection of the very best podcasts about sound. Be sure to hear the latest episodes from our friends in the community at audiopodcast.org. And if you've enjoyed this episode, please consider supporting on patreon.com/fieldandfoley or ko-fi.com/fieldandfoley, where you gain early access to episodes in lossless format and can submit questions for our guests. Thank you for listening.